Hey everybody, it just so happens I still have the Super Soco, so I'm riding this today. Turns out I'll have it for about another week. It was a bit longer than I was expecting, but oh well. Today I want to talk about cinema. In a light sort of just, theoretical way. Just talking about the future and stuff. It's just interesting to think about these things. There was a thing I saw many years ago a few years ago, that talked about how back in the late 80s, 90s, everything was going kind of well for a lot of people, and the daily grind became a thing, and the films from back then were all about people having extraordinary things happen out of everyday life, whether that be sort of something to do with work, or it's aliens, or it's just the Matrix is another one, Neo stuck in the system, blah, blah, blah. Even though that may not be the meaning of the film, that's just another way of looking at it. And with the recent sort of events of COVID and everything, you have to start thinking, well, how is this going to affect future cinema? Because, as I say, culture drives films. But now there's something different that's driving films, which is that people aren't going to the cinema because, COVID, which is meaning there's an awful lot of films not getting released. Like the new Top Gun was supposed to be out, I think, 3 times already this year, and it's not coming out till next year, and they're holding off because they want people to see it in the cinema. Okay, but what it makes me think is that the future films, by the way, yes, I'm having a look on the beach for stuff, it makes me think that the future things that are coming for films will be low budget, because there won't be a lot of money to put into it, and also it's going to have to be quite a small cast. Oh, it's just a piece of leaf. Because you can't have too many people together, and obviously the whole practicality of film is something that's very difficult right now. Very expensive actors will have to be curtailed to one film, so they might go for, this might be an opportunity to see the future of cinema being smaller films, lower budgets, smaller sets, smaller crews, all of that. That might lead to story-driven films becoming popular again, or at least existing again, if you know what I mean. Don't get me wrong, we all can enjoy a mindless action film, but there is a point where the mindlessness kind of is completely overtaken any form of story. Fast and the Furious, Transformers, etc, etc. So what do you see with sort of cinema, the changes that might happen? As I say, I think it's not necessarily the trend of the taste of the people that's changing the direction of films. I think it's going to be a lot of it's to do with the practicalities of making movies. Are they not going to make movies for a while? But they all need money coming in. But then again, these things, they don't really cost money till you start making them. So they can hold on to the idea until the time seems right. But it's just, I don't think we're going to get a load of zombie films because of the whole pandemic thing. I feel like a lot of feel-good movies, or comforting movies, you might say, might get made. There is like a time for certain films. Like war films, for instance. I really enjoy some war films, but my God, they can be really sort of just, I don't know, it just makes you think about things, and they can lead to some pretty, just hating humans pretty much, and seeing that our mistakes repeat. I won't give any spoilers, but if you haven't seen 1917, and you're into cinema, and you're into videography, watch that film. It is a bit of a masterclass. Oh, of course, that's another side to it. Okay, cast and crew, COVID and all that. Well, is it cheaper then to just make CGI films now? Easier and cheaper, because you don't have to really get any of your cast anyway. You can get voice actors, you can even get that done from home almost. Get mobile studios to people, maybe. CGI now, some films is getting to a point, it's like, it's almost hard to tell. You hit that uncanny valley thing where it's too perfect, or you're just human, you can really pick it up. But I don't think we're far off the point where they could make a CGI film but like having an entire actor in a film that's not really there. I think they're getting pretty close. I mean, they could probably do it with the money now, but no film is worth putting that much money into to do that for an entire film. Obviously, as I was saying, they are holding off a load of films which would have been released by now. But they're like waiting and hoping that COVID will be gone in the next couple of months, this is what it seems like, and they're waiting off rather than releasing it into what is a very small audience of people who actually go and see it in the cinema. But I'm one of these people that I absolutely love films, but I don't enjoy watching them in the cinema that much, simply because I don't feel like I can properly immerse myself in it. You know, if I was in an empty cinema, fantastic, you know, but there's a load of people in there, and there is always something that's distracting you from the film. There's always something that's not quite right, and you know, sometimes the audio in cinemas, I find, is just over the top. You know, yeah, sure, make a film loud and sure, make it bassy, but there is a point where that doesn't make it any better. It just starts to get annoying. Though, to be fair, I haven't been to all that many cinemas in my life, because, well, I've always just preferred watching them at home. I've been asked questions in the Q&A before now, like, what's your favourite film? And I just couldn't give an answer to it, because there's just too many. I don't really have a favourite. There's just films that I like, certain films that really hit home with me, but they may only hit home at a time that I'm watching them. Years down the line, I watch them back and I'm like, not as good as I thought, or meh. I mean, part of my problem is I don't really rewatch films that often, unless it's a very complicated film, which, you know, that you can see something new in it every time you watch it. I just remember everything. I've got a very good memory for things I've seen, so I'm like, well, I know what's going to happen, I know what's next, this, that, and the other. You know, it's no surprise, there's no suspense in a film when you know what's going to happen. There's a few films that I think that people look for an action movie and then realise, oh, hang on a minute, this is an action movie, this has actually got some sort of a storyline, something moralistic to it, something a bit more than that. It seems to be an action film. I quite often like films like that. That's another thing. I notice so many things in films, and mistakes and continuity errors and stuff like that, I'm always getting broken out of the film, and that's one of the things I liked about 1917, is that I didn't get too broken out of it, apart from when I noticed the odd hidden edit not being hidden so well. I feel like in the past, every few years, you got like a standalone film that was kind of its own thing. It was a bit quirky, maybe, but it was normally really good, and I just don't feel like you get that anymore. I feel like the risk, like no one wants to take a risk anymore. Now it's like, it's got to have this many explosions, this many guns, these actors, you got to hit these marks and it'll be fine, because on average most people will like that. That's not a great thing. I'd love to know your thoughts, because obviously we will find out what will happen. So in a couple of years' time, we can maybe look back at these comments and be like, well, we were right, or we were wrong, or who knows what's going to happen. I mean, the world is currently in this crazy, crazy place. I'm hoping that social media is going through that early stage of, you know, development, and in time the human race will realise how it should and shouldn't be used, so it can be safe and safe and a benefit to mankind, rather than something that seems to be pulling it apart. At times you feel like you're having to explain to grown adults how critical thinking works, and how someone else can have a different opinion, and how facts do matter. And I heard someone, now I don't know if this is true, because this is the brilliant thing about this, 90% of statistics which are quoted are false and made up on the spot. And it's just so brilliant, because it's like, well, the people who say that are doing the same thing, like I currently probably am, unless I know where that study was. This is what I mean. I feel like we need to reach a level of understanding of how society is going to work when we have social media. Pandora's box was opened, and now we've got to try and cram some of it back in. That's my opinion on it anyway. To try and put a positive light on what's going on right now. That, of course, has got nothing to do with the pandemic, that's its own thing, but it's the way that people have handled it, how people discuss it, how people argue over it and just don't listen to another side over it, and just decide that they were right and that's that, and that's not going to get changed no matter what's said. And that is the downside of social media. And it's also bringing it back around to movies, what's sort of changed movies in a way, because they have to try and appease everyone in a way, and that doesn't make good movies. And of course streaming has really taken over the distribution of media, you know, movies and stuff, because that's probably how you've watched the last few films you've seen. Are you dying to go to the cinema? That's a question. Are you someone who goes to the cinema and you're like, I'm dying to see a movie, but I want to see it in the cinema, and I'm not going to see it until I can? Or will you just be like, well, I'll just watch it streaming, it's fine, it's cheaper anyway. You know, because a single ticket to see a movie is probably double what you pay for Netflix. Yeah, admittedly you don't get any of the new films or anything like that, but you know what I mean. Well, there we go. That was pretty much just a brain dump of me. Just sort of, I've been thinking about this for a while. Ever since I made the realization of how, you know, culture is affected by films, and how films are affected by culture. It goes sort of backwards and forwards, but the way that they tend to react in a human emotional reaction kind of way. It was very interesting. It's like, I wonder what happened now. As always, an absolutely huge thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you want to help support this channel, get videos early, be part of the Discord chat, which we're in most of the time, it seems lately. I've got the rain starting. And see Patreon exclusives and get questions answered in the monthly Q&A. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.